My parents chose my sister over me, and it backfired spectacularly. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I've always felt like the odd one out in my family. My younger sister, Emily, who's 28, has been the golden child for as long as I can remember. I used to think it was just in my head, but over time, the pattern became impossible to ignore. It's not just the little things. It's been a constant from our childhood to now. Looking back, I don't know if I should have done something earlier or if it would have even mattered. Growing up, Emily and I had a pretty typical sibling dynamic. At least that's how it probably looked from the outside. But even as kids, it was clear who my parents doted on. For my 8th birthday, I got a modest cake and a set of second-hand toys. 2 months later, Emily got a backyard carnival for her 6th birthday, complete with a clown, face painting, and pony rides. I remember sitting there staring at my slice of cake and realizing it wasn't just about the party, it was about what it symbolized. In school, the difference was even more obvious. When Emily struggled with the subject, my parents hired the best tutors money could buy. When I aced my classes, they'd say something like, "You're so smart. You don't need help." I think they genuinely believed it was a compliment. The final blow came when I won a regional academic competition in high school. It was a big deal. One of those events where they handed out trophies and invited the local press. My parents promised to attend, but at the last minute, they skipped it. Emily had a soccer game that same day, then came college. I worked my butt off to get into a decent school and relied on loans to pay for it. My parents didn't contribute a cent, but they cheered me on as I signed the papers that would leave me in debt for years. Emily's experience was the exact opposite. My parents covered her full tuition and bought her a car as a graduation gift. It wasn't even subtle. I remember asking my mom why they couldn't spare anything for me, and she brushed it off saying, "It's just different with Emily." Fast forward to adulthood. I worked hard, saved every penny, and bought my first home in my late 20s. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, and I was proud of it. Emily, on the other hand, drifted from one job to another, usually quitting within a year. She'd call my parents for help every time she ran into financial trouble, and they always bailed her out. When I asked for advice during my home buying process, they barely paid attention. Meanwhile, they co-signed a loan for Emily to buy a house that was way out of her budget. It didn't take a crystal ball to see where that was headed. My wedding was another eye-opener. I'm not one to expect handouts, but it stung when my parents told me they couldn't contribute because things were tight. A month later, they gifted Emily $20,000 for her future wedding even though she wasn't even engaged. At that point, I started pulling away. I still loved my family, but I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't being treated as less important. The family business was another sore spot. My parents run a small but successful business that I helped grow over the years. I'd spent countless weekends helping out even as a kid. When I got older, I pitched ideas to expand the business, many of which paid off. But when I asked about a formal stake in the company, they laughed it off. Meanwhile, Emily, who had no involvement, was promised the entire business in their will. The breaking point came about a year ago. Emily defaulted on her house loan after losing yet another job, and my parents called me. They didn't just ask for advice. They expected me to help bail her out. When I refused, my dad said something that still echoes in my head. "Family comes first." I hung up the phone and cried. Not because of what they said, but because I finally realized where I stood. Since then, I've started therapy and focused on building a life where I don't rely on their approval. I landed a big promotion, started traveling, and even got back into hobbies I'd forgotten about. But my family's drama isn't over, not even close. Emily's poor decisions have only made things worse for my parents, and it's clear the tension is reaching a boiling point. A few weeks ago, I decided to share my story online partly to vent and partly to hear from others. I thought it might help to see if anyone else had gone through something similar. What I didn't expect was how much worse everything would get after that. Update 1. Not long after I shared my story, things started spiraling faster than I could have imagined. Emily came up with her latest grand idea, a business plan for a luxury lifestyle service. She claimed it would be a subscription-based app offering access to high-end events, private jets, and exclusive deals. It sounded like something pulled from a late-night infomercial, but she pitched it to my parents like it was a guaranteed gold mine. I wasn't surprised when my parents backed her. What did shock me was how far they were willing to go. They drained a significant portion of their retirement fund to invest in Emily's app idea. It wasn't just the money. They also co-signed another loan for her using their house as collateral. When I found out, I couldn't stay silent. I pointed out Emily's long history of failed ventures and irresponsible spending, but my parents brushed me off. They said I was being unsupportive, that I should be happy Emily was trying to build something for her future. Predictably, Emily's business fell apart within 6 months. She didn't do any market research, had no concrete business plan, and wasted most of the funds on flashy marketing stunts that didn't pan out. She even leased an expensive office space that she couldn't afford after Q1. When it all collapsed, she claimed the economy was to blame, and my parents swallowed her excuses whole. Meanwhile, My parents started showing signs of financial strain. They stopped eating out and canceled a vacation they'd been planning for months, but they still wouldn't hold Emily accountable. Instead,